Okay. Okay.
Okay, great. So very exciting. We're going to hear more from Reese, and we had two more students lined up, but I'm not sure where they are, such as the nature of the beast sometimes with working with the teenagers. But we're really glad that Reese is here. Thank you. And then we're going to hear from Jolene and Lisa Moore from a parent's perspective. And then since we are, I mean, this program is all a part of Rotary, so we want you to know a little bit about Rotary. So we're going to tell you about Rotary International, our district, some of the other youth programs we have, and then we'll go into the specific details of the STEP process.
Also, I think maybe I could share a little bit about Susie, just from what she's told me, and maybe you could share a little bit about Rowan if she doesn't,
Sure.
They don't come, just because you have the slides and we can at least.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Okay, Reese, you're on.
All right. So, as I've already said, my name's Reese, and I'm a senior at Chesaning. I chose to go to France for my location, and it was actually it was kind of like we had trouble finding people, and then there was just schedules, and it was really chaotic for a few weeks there. But finally, Lynn, of course, got everything set up great, and ended up pairing me with probably the perfect host family I could have. And I ended up going to France. The picture on the left is me at the Louvre in front of a very famous statue. And I just got a ton of pictures. I filled up an entire book full of them, and I just have so many. And then the one on the right is a church that we visited near their town. It's really out of place. It's middle of nowhere town, barely any stores, and they just have a massive church there. So it's very fun going to that and just walking around, seeing everything in France.
I think there's one more slide of pictures for Reese.
Yeah, that's what yeah, we go.
So this is me and Baptiste and a few of his friends. While I was there, they informed me that they have an apartment in a beach town and that we would be staying there for 2 days. And I was like, okay, that'll be fun, staying there with like the family and everything. I was just really staying there with him and his friends. So it was just us walking around, having a good time. We got to go to the beach every day, eat ice cream. That one in the red is Baptiste, and then the white sweatshirt is Camille, and the one at the end there is Antoine. And we just really hung out for a few days, got to know each other better, and made a few jokes.
How was your experience traveling alone to and from a foreign country?
It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Everyone in airports are a lot more helpful than people expect them to be. Like if you go up and ask anyone a question, they're just as like, I need to get this done. They'll help you. They don't want you to miss your flight. You don't want to miss your flight. Everything will go smoothly as long as you know which questions to ask and you ask them.
Was there anything that you were nervous about that when you were faced with it, you were like, oh, this is no big deal?
The one thing I was nervous about was how was I going to read the signs when I got into France? But I found this family that had flown from America and France a ton, and it kind of felt like I had become part of their family for the entire walk through the airport. They just went along. They were like, all right, you're going to need to go this way next. And then through those doors, that's where I found Baptiste and his father, and it was real smooth sailing from there.
And tell us about your experience with language as a whole. How was that?
I don't know any French. I won't really joke too much about that. But the people there, they all either had a basic grasp of it or they would work together. Like his friend group, not too many of them could do a full conversation without like repeating a few words or anything, but they would like work together to like talk. And it's easy to explain words because some of the complex ones they don't get immediately, but if you like say something that it's part of or you like explain it, it'll get through and there'll be no problems there really.
Well, initially, because Reese had only had 1 year Spanish because of band, any of the countries he was going to be placed in, there wouldn't have been a language barrier. So unlike some of the other students who, maybe wanted to go to Italy because they had been practicing Italian, or Germany and they had a German, Reese didn't have that. So he did try to cram some, what was the Rosetta Stone or something, to try to have a conversational knowledge, but it's hard to get the vernacular down, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Right,
Well-
that's for sure. Anybody have any questions? You could open your thing or put in the chat any questions you might have for Reese before we move to the next set of slides. Any other questions? Okay, well, he'll be around, so we can ask him more even later by email. He may need leave now because he might have homework or other things he needs to do. But if you have any questions, ask him now, or even put them in the chat and we can get answers to you if he's not with us.
All right, Lynn, you want to talk about Susie?
Sure, I'll just talk a little bit about Susie. Susie she did this map here, Mogliano Veneto, and that's near Greece. It's kind of a suburb of Greece. Susie had just graduated from Meridian Early College program, and she had finished her senior year of high school. Basically, they keep going because they do the early college. And so she was, you might say, post senior year, she went to Venice. I don't know what the big house is. I don't think it's her family house, so it must be some kind of palatial house near where she was. Her family, her sister, her host sister, is there in front of some old columns in Venice. Susie said she really loved going to every Sunday. They would go to the extended family's grandparents' home, and the whole extended family would get together. And she really liked that family time, and she found a lot of appreciation for the culture and really saw the people as very warm and engaging. A little more so than kind of a typical American individuality, you might say, or perhaps not quite as outgoing, was one thing she said. Susie had a little trouble scheduling also because her host sister, or the sister who came here and whom she visited, is on the national swim team for Italy. And because of practice and commitments and competition, she came late in the year, late in the summer. And so she came, I think it was 3 weeks in August, and did go to school here at Meridian with her host brother. And she went to a couple of days at Delta College with Susie. So if there is a crossover, and that could happen even in our coming year, because of if students from here might go earlier, our schools end earlier than European schools end. And so there is a chance our students might go attend with a student, and that is fine. They don't enroll, they're just shadowing, but it was a way, and Veronica really enjoyed going to classes and going to the high school classes, as well as she really liked the college classes. And she's good in math, so she went to, I know, a math class at Delta. The family took her camping. So that's the picture on the left. They did some camping up, I think, in the UP, and then some camping at Higgins Lake. And then the picture in the middle here is Susie's father got married at Higgins Lake. You can see on the water, and that must be like a wedding arbor that they had the ceremony in. And then that's Veronica doing looks like those are the beads that you put in the oven and it turns into, and Susie works in an art studio. And so they probably did do a number of art or arts and craft types of projects.
Nice.
Okay, Rowan was from Mount Pleasant, and she was actually our youngest student that we had go on exchange. She was just shy of the minimum age requirement, but we met with her and decided that that we thought she would be a good fit. So she also went to France and had a great time. She was in Lille.
Lil, Lille.
She was there, and you can see her host sister or exchange sister there. Her name, we were pronouncing it as Alice, but we found out later that it was actually Elise, I think.
Mhm.
And so that just kind of goes to show that there could be surprises at any turn on the exchange. Doesn't mean it's good or bad, but language definitely, it makes you think, and for both people makes you think about how you're saying things, how fast you're saying things, and if something needs to be said in a different way or not. So yep, great. So these are all when she was over in France. And I know that they went to a couple of different places. They went to Paris. They stayed in their town. I think they also had a beach house that they went to. So it's really common for a lot of Europeans to have, like, you know, the month of August off and it's vacation. And so all the families and all the friends get together and they do fun things. So last year, I'll say that we did have a little bit of a challenge with schedules because we weren't allowed to do anything until I think it was July 1.
Right.
And so this year exchange will open up beginning of June, July, and August to work on things. So I think it will go a little bit smoother this year. All right, this is me as well.
Are we going to do parent testimonials first before we get to that?
You're right, Jolene. This is what I get for forgetting to make you guys a slide.
That's right.
Lisa?
I think that this program was the best for our family, our club, our community. Obviously, with the showing that we had today, a lot of kids were excited about this program. So much so that our Spanish teacher has decided to do her trip again that she's done in the past, and she's taking students to Costa Rica next summer, and she has 30 kids signed up to go on an educational tour. And I owe it all to the exchange program again coming back, because the kids are just so excited about heading out and going someplace. I just, the thing I love about Rotary, it's not set up to place your student someplace for money. These are individuals who get to know your student, and they talk to people in another country who know who you're going to be with. And the way Lynn set Reese up with Baptiste, he was in a lake area. His family was similar. They had so many things that brought them together that even though they had a language barrier, they found ways around all of it. So much so that their entire family is coming to New York City for Christmas. And we have our tickets and our hotel and our flight booked. We're going to spend Christmas in New York City to meet our family from France now. So we're all looking forward to it. They are so excited. I spoke with them and they shared their itinerary and where they're going to be. And she said, you let us know where you're going to be and we'll be there.
Good. Yeah, I think that's really speaks to the, Rotary does youth exchange as a way, really as part of our peace effort. The idea of you're building these friendships and familiarity with others in another part of the world. And that really, when the families, even in short visit here, your family's connected enough that you're going to have a longer term relationship just by virtue of that. So I think it doesn't happen every time, but it's always, that is why we kind of have the program. Any questions for Lisa? And Reese is still there because we can ask him too. Okay, Jolene.
As I mentioned kind of previous to the recording, I'm very involved in a few different aspects of Rotary Youth Exchange, long-term and short-term. My daughter was a long-term exchange student to Croatia 4 years ago, and my son got a taste of some international travel within the last year. And so he said, you know, the short-term exchange sounds really exciting, a little shorter. I can still play my sports and enjoy my senior year, but also make that connection with another individual and see another part of the world. And it isn't just you go visit and be a tourist. You're part of a family. You know, you go somewhere and then you bring that person back and you bring them into your life. So Colton went to Germany and stayed with a young man. His name was Julius. And Colton and Julius in Germany got to see lots of areas around Munich and got to share their love of sports together and meet lots of friends and do things. And Julius came back with Colton. And when he arrived here, we took him all around Beaverton, but we also did some other family vacations. We went to Chicago because that sounded like something fun to do. Took him to a family wedding up north. Went and saw a soccer game down at University of Michigan. So we exposed Julius to some different things. It made us kind of slow down and explain what's going on in our family and in our country, in our community. School then started, and Julius got to go with Colton to school for a little while, a couple weeks, 10 days or so, and was very excited to be kind of part of the football team. So he was very involved in soccer. He's very involved in soccer in Germany. And so he really enjoyed actually an American football team and what was involved there. It was wonderful hosting for a few weeks. And like I said, being the ambassador and a family, kind of explaining things and listening and talking was wonderful. I was able to take the boys to our Rotary Club, to our Gladwin Rotary Club, and share their experiences from their exchange on both sides of the ocean with our community, our broader community, which was very, very nice for everybody involved. So,
Was Colton able to go to a Rotary meeting in Germany?
he was. I'm gonna just recite because he's Colton and he wouldn't mind. He giggled because I've been a Rotarian for many years too. And my children have been involved in Rotary for many years, helped me with many service projects and many family Rotary events. But he laughed and giggled. He said it was the biggest room of old white guys he'd ever seen in his life when he got to Germany. So but
This is what's outside.
It was kind of more of a house party than a Rotary meeting. Whereas here we just kind of eat like regular lunch and everything. They were cooking chicken outside, they were popping champagne bottles and wine bottles, they were having a party. And like I was expecting to have to be so formal. It was very informal. They just really had fun. I gave a little speech and toast at it in a language that none of them understood. And we just ate and had fun.
Nice.
Yeah, good.
So I thought that might be a good segue for you guys about Rotary International.
Okay, we'll let Alicia take it on.
All right, so Rotary International is a humanitarian service organization, and their goal is to bring people together so that we can then do good things within our community. And I'm going to read you the mission statement of Rotary because I actually think that that encompasses who we are and what we want to achieve quite well. So the mission is to provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. Rotary has been around since 1905. It was first founded in Chicago, We have 1.4 million members worldwide, and I don't know how many clubs, but thousands. And it's a really fantastic organization to be a part of. My dad was in Rotary for probably 20 years, so I myself am a legacy member of Rotary, and definitely have enjoyed all my time in it because it's afforded me the opportunity to do things that I wouldn't normally do, like work with members outside of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, to do something super awesome for the youth within our district. So it's great that we're able to give back to our community, but the club also gives back to you as an individual as well. I'm going to have Lynn go to the next slide. And this is kind of the how of how we get stuff done. So we live by the 4-way test. And that is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? At club meetings, you'll have people or clubs who might recite this every meeting. We don't recite it all the time at our club. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But we always actually have a banner up. So what we like to have the actions that we do be guided by the 4-way test. And if you look at them, I feel like there are 4 really easy things that we can do just to be good citizens of the world and our communities. So Rotary has 7 areas of focus. We used to have 6, but we recently added a new one. From the top left, we have basic education and literacy, maternal and child health, peace and conflict resolution, water, sanitation and hygiene, economic and community development, disease prevention and treatment, and supporting the environment. Now, there are several projects that go along with each of these individual areas of focus. If you guys are interested in learning more about one specific one, let me know and I can send you some information. But I'll give you an example of one that you may have heard of. I hope that you have heard of it at least. Under the disease prevention and treatment, Rotary is trying our very best to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. And let me tell you, when I say we're close, I'm saying we're really, really, really close. Yeah, I don't know how many cases there have been this year off the top of my head, but like 5 maybe, somewhere between 5 and 10, which is pretty incredible. There's only one other disease that's been eradicated off of the face of the earth, and that is smallpox. So if and when we do eradicate polio, it will be something to celebrate for sure. So at the international level, we have the big areas of focus and then projects underneath of them. But then within our districts, we also have different projects and initiatives. And then within our club and in our communities, we have different projects and initiatives that could fall under one or all of the initiatives or the areas of focus, depending on what exactly that project is.
And one thing I will just add, the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do, these 4 things, and I think it applies to students. I really think it is something we all as individuals and students can use in their lives and decision making. So it's really, as Alicia said, a good 4 things to consider when we're taking action or talking to someone.
Mm-hmm. Jolene, were you going to talk about the district, or?
I have you
Yep.
doing that. Oh, is she? Oh, she is. Okay.
I can. So District 6310, I always say it's easy to remember because it goes from Oscoda to Owasso. You can see all of these little dots here are different clubs within our district. The beauty of having such a long, diverse district is you get some urban areas and some rural areas. And Youth Exchange, a beautiful part of having a district that covers such space is there's lots of opportunities for students in this large area to get involved in Rotary Youth Exchange.
It actually goes as far as Alpena.
Alpena, okay.
That's the top one. So
That's the top one.
It's central northeast Michigan.
Thank you, Lynn. And actually, Alpena is very active this year in long-term exchange.
Right.
So they have some students going and they have some students there. So
That's great.
And how many people do we have? I think it's about 1,400.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I think so. There's about 33 clubs.
Okay. So our youth programs, we have Interact, which is a high school club of Rotary. So think about, the Rotary Club that you have in your community. This is the Rotary Club within your high school community, and any kid can join. I think that you could compare it to Key Club, which is another popular high school club, focused on volunteering and doing good things within your high school community as well as your community.
And I think we have about 9 maybe only 7 right now in our district of 32 clubs.
Yeah, COVID wasn't kind to our subcategory of clubs, but they're starting to grow again, and we're getting more youth involved with different things like STEP. So we're happy to have things moving again. RYLA is the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, which is a really fancy way to say like a weekend conference where students go and they do team building exercises, they gain confidence within themselves, they make new friends. They might go with a core group of people from their school, but they are forced to meet and talk and mingle and work on different projects with all of the kids in the district who end up going to RYLA. And then youth exchange, we've touched on that quite a bit. We have the long-term and then we have the short-term exchange programs.
And Jolene will summarize those two.
yes, so the long-term exchange program is typically 11 months. What makes Rotary Youth Exchange different than other programs is that the children stay within the same community. They attend the same high school or whatever school is in that country, and they move families, which at first seems very odd to people that have done research in youth exchange. But what makes it really nice is you actually get to experience the whole of the community instead of just out of one family. So as I mentioned, my daughter did long-term exchange. She had the opportunity to stay within 3 families. The first one was a single mom. And neither one of them she didn't speak English. My daughter didn't speak Croatian. And it was a 1-bedroom apartment with a lot to learn. And the 2 of them learned and grew quite a bit in those first 3 to 4 months of her exchange. Her second family was also a single mom, but she was a dentist and had a couple of houses and was a little affluent in the community. And so that was a whole different perspective from how things were or are in her first family. And then the third one was a more traditional family. Being able to move different families actually just gives you a much rounded version. You get to keep your same friends if you're the kid or the student, excuse me. You keep typically your same friends from school, and you keep your same teachers in your support system, your same Rotary Club. But it's a little easier for families possibly to host for 3 or 4 months versus a whole 11 months. The cost is about $5,000 to $6,000, and it's valued at $24,000. As was mentioned earlier in this meeting, Rotary, there is no, it's all done by volunteers. So those costs are kept down because in part because it's a lot of volunteers in America or in the US that help to send the kids, and over in the hosting country, they're all volunteers. And it has a very strong support system. Long-term exchange is typically, we say, is a 3-year commitment. You have 1 year. The first year you interview, you get accepted, and you spend the year training, educating, learning about the culture, and learning about how to be a good ambassador of yourself, of your community, and of our country. And then you go for your 11 months. And then when you come back, there's a year of getting back adjusted into your new life and into what you've brought and learned from exchange. So that's long-term exchange. Short-term exchange is a family-to-family exchange. It's 3 to 4 weeks, usually over the summer. And the costs there is an estimate of what that would be. This is the program that we're talking about today. And as we had mentioned, our district just stepped back into doing short-term exchange after decades of taking it off. And we found it to be very successful with the 5 students that we sent abroad and the 5 students that visited our country over the summer.
Okay, so let's do a little bit more details of what goes into the short term. And if you have questions, you can surely raise them, please, or put a hand up or type it in the chat and we might try to cover those. You can always ask at the end as well if we leave something out you were interested in or hoping to hear about. As we said, the process it starts right now, and now until December 15th, we're accepting the preliminary applications. Those can be completed and submitted online on the website. And the website, if you look at Rotary District 6310, in the youth tab, there'll be short-term exchange, and there is an application link to the preliminary, and also a lot of these details are there. The website also has a lot of other information that can be helpful. And so the key criteria are GPA of 2.5 and the age range between 15 and 18 years of age. Probably can be 18 and a half actually, as it's post high school within that time frame. Once we get the preliminary application, we identify the local sponsoring Rotary Club and who from that club, a Rotarian, who will be the lead person to work with the student. And that step representative is designated then. And that's the person who will work with the student at the local level to kind of walk them through the process, to bring them to the Rotary Club, to help build the connection back to the Rotary Club. Then January 15th is kind of the next line, but between the 15th, we will send out this, we need to add that bullet, we will send out the full application. There is a more detailed full application that is also online that needs to be filled in. We need to get teachers, some references for the students. The host family also needs to complete an online application, and we do background checks on the family. We'll have references for the family as well as references for the student, and the students will write a letter to the Rotarians and host families that goes into the application. That's part of the application. And parents will write a letter that goes into the student's application. The family will submit with the full application some pictures of the home of the family, some favorite activities. That's kind of part of the application that then is shared with the family across the globe. And we right now are exchanging with Europe. Students will pick their top countries, and then we look for the match with that. So the applications, the online big application gets submitted by January 15th. Once we receive that triggers the references, the background checks, and also triggers the supplemental information. The supplemental information is PDF forms that need to be signed and signatured by families. There is a medical form that needs to be completed. And so that's January 15th. The bigger application online is submitted, so all those other wheels can turn. By February 1st will be home visits. So kind of between the 15th and the 1st, we would have a home visit where the local Rotarian representative for STEP would visit the home, probably 2 Rotarians, and interview the student and the parents, see if there is a readiness, a comfort level for the exchange. And there are some signatures that usually would be witnessed at the time of the home visit. This is signing a liability. Kind of you're giving medical, also medical, a release of medical information, medical, what do we say? Released, not just information, you're allowing Rotary and the host family to act on the parents' behalf in their absence. So it's a pretty broad medical release as well as liability release that has to be signed. And there is a $250 program fee that pays for the background checks, that pays for the orientation we have in the springtime, and it pays for healthcare insurance, supplemental healthcare that is required for all students who are participating. And that's purchased for just the period of time that the students are traveling abroad. So by the 15th, the final application would be fully submitted, everything approved, everything completed, and they would be entered after that into what we call the YEAH system, Youth Exchange Administration Hub, I think is what we call it, which is a kind of a big database that stores this information, and we share that then with some of the countries use our YEAH, other countries don't, but we put all the applications there and then they're sent through the system to many of the countries. Some of them I have to go to an alternative system in some countries. And we do have a required orientation that's held in the spring. Last year, we did it on a Sunday afternoon. That is for students and at least one parent. If a student isn't able to attend, then we will, because of some major commitment, we would follow up with that student to make arrangements for them to get the information. But it is a required orientation for the students. Once we have the applications, that's usually, we said February 15th. So I work on the match. So the matches will determine between the 15th and probably about the 30th of March. And that's where I'm looking at the preferred countries that the students were interested in. I'm looking for Rotary partners in those countries who have a boy or a girl who want to go to the country and who, we look at, is it somebody who likes sports? Is this somebody who likes the arts? We try to find what looks like from the application, a parallel or a fit between the student. We don't know these students, so some of it, and we try to identify any barriers. And as we've talked about a little bit, the scheduling and the match was a bit of a trouble because we had a shortened summer with Rotary limiting. Rotary told us we couldn't exchange because of the pandemic until July 1. So that really put a little bit of a squeeze on some of the planning. But once we identify a family, we may give a little bit of information to each family. They say, yes, it looks good. Then we have the 2 families can begin communication. We share the profiles across the families and across the, in this case, the ocean, but families then can begin to talk on Zoom, talk on Facebook, do FaceTime, start to communicate and get to know one another. And they decide together, the 2 families work to decide on the best travel timeline for each student and family. So it's really the families who fine-tune the departures and arrivals and who's going to go first. This past summer, all of our students went first and all of the visiting students came second. I think it can go either way, but in this case, that's the one that happened. We want those plans to be reviewed by the committee before the final flights are booked, just to make sure that, you know, they've thought about things and they've looked at the length of connections that students might have. The students, once we know the flights and the actual arrival and departures, then the insurance can be purchased. And Jolene is our financial person, so she's the one who worked with the insurance company to purchase the insurance, both for our outbound students, the ones going from Michigan, as well as purchasing, they purchase the ones that come here. And then the Rotary clubs support the students. The local Rotary is there to support the students and host families, hopefully inviting them to the meetings. If they needed some other support with perhaps transportation or activities, we would hope the local Rotary club would be helpful. And we always have our guidance or our STEP committee, which is, we have about 6 of us. You've met 3 of us, Jolene, Alicia, and myself, and we have 3 others who also work with us and whom students and parents will meet as time goes forward, along with their club. And I think that ends up the process. So now we're open for any questions anybody might have.
So I wondered if you could just clarify, Eva plays volleyball, and of course they practice, you know, almost the whole month of August right into school. You mentioned possibly going after her senior year. Did I understand that right?
Students can. Susie went after her senior year if they're not a really old senior. Some countries don't want students too old. I think they feel like the age range is too great.
Okay.
But depending on the birth date, but the volleyball, if she went in June, usually that can work. Our schools get out earlier than the schools there. A student might go to school there, some, just like the students who came here went to school, some.
No, makes sense.
So it can work before graduation. We had one student who was going to do it after graduation, and then at the last minute decided, oh, she needed to work in the summer to pay for some of her college expenses, and so she wasn't able to go, which was too bad. I see something in the chat. Roxy's mom, Shannon, letters from the student and parents. Did I say those are due on January 15th? And yes, those are part of the big application, and they are included in the forms that come online and that are submitted online. And they could be submitted. The earlier a student finishes, the better it is, because then I kind of we know who's going to finish, and we know what country they might be preferring. The country choices come in the supplemental forms, and those are usually sent out to the students once we have at least the formal application begun. The bigger online application is what we send once we assign a student, and that can take longer to get all the supplemental forms done. So we really want to keep students moving along, and the sooner I know things, the sooner we can start the match. But other countries aren't always ready for us either. They're doing their part. So we found last year our students were kind of ahead of the game, and we didn't know that. And that's why we've moved everything back a couple of weeks, and we didn't start this process until fall this year. Last year we started in the spring, as a year plus ahead. So we delayed it a little bit because I think for students it felt like it was too long. Any other questions?
So when you mentioned the cost, you know, being between $1,500 and $2,000, is that including the plane tickets, or that would be additional to that?
That's the total cost.
Oh, wow. Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
so like the program fee is $250. That covers. So depending on your flights and when you're going and what works for everybody, that's where the cost comes in.
It's the
And our
airline.
cost estimates. It's the airline tickets, and then also
The cost of
if
the
you
passport as
Yep,
well
co-
would be
yep.
involved.
in that if you don't
And
have a
surely
passport or
there
if you
would
need
be
that.
and spending money, it would be based on, you know, what the family and the student figure they can do. But the biggest cost is the airline ticket. And the cost to the program is mostly the insurance and some paying for the food we had at the training and incidental things. We did purchase with that. Every student had a t-shirt that was a youth exchange t-shirt and a few of those kind of things. But it's basically the cost of the ticket, the airline ticket that is.
Reese did wear his t-shirt when he went. He was reluctant in the beginning, but I truly think that's why the people helped him in the airport, because they knew
Oh.
he was with a traveling, you know, he was a Rotarian. So I liken it to the long-term students wearing their blazers or Rotarians wearing our pins. That's our outward message of who we are.
That's right. That's our purpose. And, you know, I don't know if we gave the kids a badge. We should get the Central States badge and put that on like backpacks too. That would, somebody could stitch it on their backpack. That would be an idea. But that's what we've heard. And the long-term students do have jackets, and they wear like a blazer type jacket with pins on it. Our students do not have that because they really don't have as broad an exposure. But I think the t-shirts, that was part of our intent. And I think good to hear that it maybe worked.
I think it did.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You know, we have not gotten any emails from you. I think Roxy, Charlotte, Emily, and Miranda, if you do want to send us your email, that, or put it in the chat, that would be helpful. We do have Eva's because Eva has submitted her preliminary application. And we have another student already, Gretchen, who is from Midland as well. So we have Eva's preliminary from Beaverton High School, and we have one from Midland High School. But those of you, the other Chesaning students who are on, if you want to give us your email, we can stay in touch. Sometimes I become a pest. Oh, there's one. Thank you. And I will kind of watch for that. Alicia, you're faster than I am. Would you take those down? Good. Thank you.
I think I had one other just quick question with the war in Ukraine, which I hate to, think about. But is there a pretty solid plan for evacuation or something like that if something were to get wacky?
Yes, Rotary has had to do this before. The student is under the guidance of a Rotary Club, and the Rotary Clubs are very take the responsibility very seriously when they have an out-of-country student and we've had students in other countries before who've been in difficult circumstances in the long-term program, and they have been taken under the auspices of Rotary. We do not require students to purchase an open-ended ticket. That if somebody was worried about that, they might choose to get what's called an open ticket, which means you get priority for your return flight. That if somebody was worried about that, we do not require you to do that. So if a student needed to get out, they would have to pay for that exit ticket, probably separate from the ticket they had already. But the long-term requires that type of ticket. That's why the cost is higher, and seldom have had to use it, if ever, so we are not doing that. But Rotary does take very seriously. And there's another question about how the pandemic affected opportunities in Europe. I didn't hear of any issues, limitations that any of the students mentioned.
Reese's family in France, Baptiste, had Matthew and Catherine had told us that having Reese vaccinated would be helpful,
Oh,
that
we
there
re-
are a lot
we
of
re-
places.
Oh, we
Um,
require that. That's part of the
okay.
requirements.
So that was one of the conversations we had had, and he had been vaccinated and boosted, and so everything was fine. They could go anywhere. They had absolutely no problems.
But we did require, and it would still be required, I suspect, that all students have up-to-date vaccination. So it'd be the initial and the boosters, and documentation with them should they need it. I don't know that it presented any limitations to anyone. What about Colton, Jolene, from your experience?
No, there were none, but as always, the pandemic has been a very fluid situation. And so, even since Colton went, I was in Europe, and each area, like here, but more so there, has their own guidance around pandemic. Mask, no mask, vaccination, no vaccination, show your card, don't show your card. All of those things have been very fluid. So when you book a ticket internationally, there's still, even I think domestically, but internationally, there's still warnings of, check the CDC before you board the plane to make sure that you have all things covered that they would like. So
Yeah, and that's what
I don't think that's changed yet.
Yeah, and when I was working with all of the match partners, they all wanted the students vaccinated and boosted. And so I think that was required by both sides of the pond. And I think we also will say that to students both, before in the orientation, we said, be, like Jolene said, be appraised of the current situation in your country. And because you have communication with that family, do talk about it specifically to their area and their region. And I think even the question you had, Colleen, about the war in Ukraine and evacuation, talking to the family and what, I think Reese had the Czech Republic as one of his countries. And then when it came down to really looking at that, because we did exchange with the Czech was available, but I think Reese preferred to be a little further away and chose France over the Czech Republic. And we try to honor the requests of students and families. And we were pretty successful at placing students in countries that they wished for and found partners who were good to work with. Any other final questions? We should probably close up, and thank you all for coming. Students, thank you so much, and parents for coming on to the call and the Zoom meeting, and we will post it on our website. So, and the website has a wealth of information and some testimonials, and we have updated pictures. We're really excited about it. So make sure you read through the website and see all those smiling faces. And it was fun for us and exciting to be able to have pictures of our 5 students with their host families and their siblings in other parts of the world. So we're happy to have you, and we would welcome any of you students to look at the website, submit a preliminary. If you have any problems, you have our contact information. Alicia, would you put that in the chat? I'll put mine and you put yours. And that way they have ours. I mean, it was probably in the message. Okay, so those are ours. So feel free to get in touch with us if you have any more questions, parents or students, at any time. And we're all here to answer them and support you as best we can. Hope to hear from some of you.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I know there's a lot. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak, one-on-one like this. Thanks a ton.
Glad to do that. Glad
you were here.
Yeah. Okay, bye everybody.
Ciao.